Okay guys, probability equations on this video. This one is a question that you'll find probably on a paper 1. You don't really need a calculator for it. And it is going to be about 4 or 5 marks in total. So let's jump right in and see what happens. So there are some red counters and some blue counters in a bag. The ratio of red counters to blue counters is a 3-to-1 ratio. So because we don't know how many counters are in the bag, we have red to blue like that is going to be 3-to-1. But like I said, because we don't know, we're going to say let it be X number of counters in the bag. So basically we have 3x red counters and 1x blue counters, okay, which then gives us a total of 4x as the total number of counters in the bag. If you're wondering where I got that from, 3x plus 1x is 4x. Okay, so now we're going to hop through the question. So that sorts the ratio part out. It says 2 counters are removed at random. Now, because they didn't tell you this been put back, you need to assume that the counters have not been replaced. Okay, so they removed 2 counters and they haven't put them back as they were taking them out. So that's something to pay attention to. The probability that both counters were taken are blue is 1/20. 1/20th. Okay, so what we'll do is let's draw a quick tree diagram, and if for some reason you don't know what a probability tree diagram is, you might want to just check my video out on that. So have a quick look at probability tree diagram. Okay, at the moment, I only care about the blue. Even though I've drawn 2 stalks on my tree diagram, I only care about what happens with the blue. So if they're going to take 2 blue out, it means you want a blue and then another blue. So I'm going to go probability of a blue. Now, when they go to take the first blue out, the blue is x, and the total is 4x. So the probability of getting a blue is x over 4x. Now, remember, a blue counter has been taken out, which means that you no longer have a total of 4x in the bag. You no longer have a total of x blue counters in the bag either. So it means that you're 1 counter less. So therefore, to get my next blue, it's going to be x minus 1 because you're a counter down. And you're also a counter down from the total, so 4x minus 1 as well. Okay, so make sure you do pause the video if you need to, and just make sure you wrap your brain around what just happened. Okay, so a blue counter has been taken out. Initially, I had x blue counters over a total of 4x counters, but because one was removed and it wasn't replaced, I no longer have x blue counters when I go for my second pick. I've now got x minus 1 because a counter is gone, and then 4x minus 1 down there. So now they said that the probability of getting 2 blues, or a blue and a blue, it means the probability of getting 1 blue and the probability of getting another blue. Don't forget, in probability, and when you use and, you multiply there. All right, let's crack on. So that's going to then be my first blue, x over 4x. I should put this as an implies, times x minus 1 over 4x minus 1. And they said that that probability is 1 out of 20, which we've been given in the question there. All right, cool. Now what you have is, in my opinion, an algebraic equation, an algebraic fraction equation, which we will then now need to go and solve. Okay, so before we go and solve, let's just check out and see what it is that we're going to be asked for. So work out how many counters were in the bag before any counters were removed. Okay, that's brilliant. So that basically means once we solve for x, we can just substitute that x back in there, and then we will know how many counters were in the bag before anything was removed. All right, let's go. So let's sort this fraction out then. We got nothing to cancel, so we just multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So that's going to give us now x squared minus x divided by 16x squared minus 4x, and that is going to be equal to 1 out of 20. If I lost you there for a second, this x will multiply by everything here. So just sort of imagine that there are brackets around that, and then the x will multiply by that x, gives you x squared, and by that one gives you minus x. And then this 4x will multiply by everything there. Same sort of routine. Imagine some brackets around that. 4x times x is 16x squared. 4x times minus 1 is minus 4x. And then now, what we do is, I would advise a bit of a cross multiplying here. So we can cross multiply that with that and cross multiply this with that. I hope you are familiar with the term cross multiplying. Anyway, what happens is all of this multiplies by 1 and all of that multiplies by 20. So what we'll end up with would be 16x squared minus 4x is equal to 20x squared minus x. All right, so pretty straightforward. I didn't put this in brackets because it's been multiplied by 1, so it's not going to change anything. All right, let's expand our brackets now. So we're going to have 16x squared minus 4x is equal to 20x squared minus 20x. Because it's obviously going to be a quadratic, we'll bring everything to one side, so we have 0 on the other side. So if I take all of this and plug it over there, we're now going to have 20x squared minus 16x squared minus 20x plus 4. There's nothing, sorry, 4x. There's nothing left over there. And now it's a matter of simplifying. We can subtract these two here, which is why I put them together. 4x squared minus 16x is equal to 0. All right, so again, you can subtract those two because they're the same. We factorize this out, it's quadratic. You can divide by 4 first. Actually, let's do that and just do an aside over here. So if you divide by 4, you'll get x squared minus 4x is equal to nothing. And then we factorize that out. So x into x minus 4 is equal to 0 like that. So it basically means now when you separate this, that x will equal to 0. And then when you put this equal to 0, x minus 4 is equal to 0, you'll end up bringing the 4 over, and then you'll get x is equal to 4. Okay, so we've got two answers, which is what we expected. Let's go back to our question for a second. The question says that we need to find how many counters were in the bag before counters were removed. We were given two very different answers here. Now, I will now say to you, you will need to ignore this answer because the blue can't be 0, okay? It just doesn't make sense, all right, that the blue is 0. However, we're going to take the answer that there were 4 blue counters in the bag because x was the number of blue counters. So it means that, therefore, the total counters in the bag will be 4 times 4, which is equal to 16 counters. Now, from our 16 counters that we have in the bag there, just to make sure how I got the 16, is what I was meaning to say, was 4 times x. That's the total number of counters in the bag. Okay, so now that I found out that x was equal to 4, then that goes to 16. All right, guys, that question took a long time. That was 10 minutes so far in the video, and we've got another couple of questions to do. So let's move swiftly on to the next one. Okay, here's our second question. This time I'll be moving just a little bit faster because the video is already quite long as it is. So, and I might actually jump through some shortcuts in hopes that you'll figure out what I'm doing. So 5 red counters and x blue counters in a bag. So that's rather interesting. So if you've got 5 red and x blue, it means that your total in the bag would be 5 plus x. Hope you got that, okay? So that's the total that's in the bag. So 2 counters were removed from the bag at random. Again, assume that they haven't been replaced, or the first one hasn't been replaced, certainly. The probability that they're both red is that work out the value of x. So this is pretty straightforward. They want you to find how many blue counters there are in the bag. So again, let's stick our tree diagram in there just to focus our minds a little bit. And if we're just concerned about the red counters. So your probability of it being red, when you've taken the first red counter out, there were 5 to choose from out of a total of 5 plus x. Okay, because there are 5 red counters there. Now, we want to choose our next red counter. There are no longer 5 red counters in the bag. So the next red counter you choose will come from a total of 4. And out of a total of 5 plus x minus 1. I thought I should really stick that in there so that you can really see that it's going to be 1 less. And that's really important, okay? Now that we've got that, you can pretty much simplify this if you want to and say that it's actually 4 over 4 plus x, okay? But so long as we get that first one in, that's fine. Same as we did on the last question though, if we want to get red and another red, you're going to end up multiplying. The word and in probability means you multiply. So I'll just literally jump straight into it rather than putting down the contextual stuff. So 5 over 5 plus x times 4 plus x, and that equals to 5 over 33. This one's a lot easier than the last one. Looks like we'll be fine. Let's have a look. And again, multiply the top there. That's going to give us 20. Multiply the bottom. If you want to, let me just mention this now. Okay. That bottom bit here is a double bracket. So you need to expand it as though it was a double bracket. So you need to go like that, and then you can multiply your outer, then your outer there, then your inner, and so on. Okay, so please make sure that you expand that properly. I will just literally be jumping straight into the answer. Okay, so when we expand the bottom, we're going to get 20 plus 9x plus x squared, and that equals to 5 out of 33, like that. Same as I did on the last question, we will cross multiply there. And once we cross multiply, we will end up with 5 into 20 plus 9x plus x squared is equal to 20 times 33, like that. So we've got these two multiplying across there. All right, now let's expand the brackets. It's going to be a quadratic. Bring things over to one side and so on. Make it look a little bit neater. So we're going to have, I will start on the end here because I like my x squares being first. So 5x squared there plus 45x plus 100. And once we multiply that 20 times 33, we will get 660. Let's bring it over to this side straight away so we get nothing left over there. All right, this is looking good so far. Now we simplify, and when we simplify, we'll get 5x squared plus 45x minus 560 is equal to 0. Now, the numbers are pretty much all over the place. So what I'll do to simplify this, I'll divide everything by 5 so it looks a lot nicer once we go through it. So here we go. Multiply across, divide by 5, x squared plus 9x minus 112 is equal to 0. And now again, we go through the factorization process of this. You might want to check out my video on quick factorization. I've done a new one on quick factorization. So if you check that out, you'll be able to see where I'm going with this. So now I'll just jump straight into it. X, and we'll use 16 and 7 to give us 9. So 16 take away 7 is 9, but I want to get plus 9. and then minus 112 there. So we'll go for plus 16 and a minus 7. All right. Now, again, they're both equal to 0. So when you solve this, when you say this equal to 0, the answer will be minus 16. You say that equal to 0, you get a plus 7. So x is equal to minus 16, x is equal to 7. If we go back to the question, we've pretty much got our answer, but we need to specify which one it is exactly. First of all, they asked us to find x, but remember that x represents blue counters in the bag. We got one negative and one positive answer. We will ignore the negative answer because you can't have a negative number of counters in the bag. So therefore, we're going to say as a final thing, x is equal to 7 as our final answer. All right. Okay, one last question. Okay, so this is a two-part question. And the first part is worth 5 marks. Quite difficult, this question. And then the second part where they say find the value of n is worth 2 marks. So this is a 7-mark question. I want to point out before I begin this question, if you stumble on this question in the exam and you get stuck, okay, do what you can, but let's say you get stuck and you weren't able to bring it all the way down to prove this. Please do not give up and then ignore this question at the bottom here, because that's a straightforward quadratic. If they say find a value of n, which is what they said here, then what you need to do is basically just solve that and gain those 2 marks, okay? All right. Anyway, let's go through the question and see what happens there. So, n counters in a bag. 4 of the counters are red and the rest are blue. Let's deal with that straight away. In the bag, you've got a total of n counters. You've got 4 of them being red, which means that the blue counters in the bag is going to be the total take away the red counters. Okay, so it's going to be the total, which is n take away the 4 red counters. All right, now Ross takes a counter from the bag at random, does not replace it. I like when they tell you this and not make you assume that, okay? So they basically say it wasn't replaced there. Then they said he then takes another counter from the bag. The probability that he takes 2 blue counters is 1/3. So same as we were doing before, except now this time it says show that, you'll end up with something like this. All right. So again, I'm only concerned with the blue counters. Now, don't forget that blue is n minus 4. So when he takes the first blue counter, probability that it's going to be blue, it is a total of n minus 4 over your full total in the bag of n counters. When he takes the next blue counter now, remember that first one wasn't replaced. And because it wasn't replaced, you had n minus 4 before. Now 1 will be taken away, so now you've got n minus 5 in the bag. Well, blue counters anyway. So n minus 5 over a total of n minus 1, because a counter has been removed. Same as before now, the probability of 2 blue counters would be n minus 4 over n times n minus 5 over n minus 1. And then that equals to 1/3, like that. Now, you've got an algebraic fraction situation here again, but this time you need to simplify it down to that. So let's go for it. We'll multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. Let's see what happens. So, n squared minus 9n plus 20 all over n squared minus n, and that equals to 1/3. Okay, again, this is a double bracket, so don't mix that up at all. Expand it as a double bracket, simplify it, and you'll get that. Okay, all right, let's cross multiply. So when we cross multiply, just to point out, that's going to multiply by 1, and all of that's going to multiply by 3. So we're going to end up with 3 into n squared minus 9n plus 20 is equal to n squared minus 1. Do beg your pardon, n squared minus n there. Okay, good, that's fine. Now, let's expand out this bracket. So that becomes 3n squared minus 27n. plus 60. Bring all of this stuff over to that side because we're going to need to anyway. Minus n squared plus n, and that equals to nothing. That's left over there. All right, so let's now start merging the things. So we can merge this with that. So 3n squared take away n squared is going to give us 2n squared. And then that 27n plus that 1n is going to give us 26n, so minus 26n. And then that 60 has nobody to hang out with, so that's just going to stay there, equals to 0. Now, let's have another look. We need to make it look like that. So the best thing to do here is to divide everything by 2 to simplify it. So I'm just going to say to my examiner, I'm dividing by 2, and by so doing, 2n squared becomes n squared, half of 26 is 13n, and half of 60 is 30, and that equals 0. And this is what was required. And that's my 5 marks done. Last of all now, to finish up the video, when they now say find n, all we need to do is simply sort that out. All right, so now we've got n squared minus 13n plus 30 is equal to 0. At this stage now, we're looking for 2 factors of 30. That's going to give us 13, so we'll use 10 and 3. So n minus 10, n minus 3 equal to 0. And then we can solve and say basically n is equal to 10 and n is equal to 3. Now, you need to choose one of those answers. You can't just have them both, okay? Now, let's go back to the question and think for a second. If we go back up here, remember that the counters in the bag were as follows. You had 4 red, and you've also got n minus 4 of the blue counters. Now, if we work out n to be 3, and we put 3 in there, it means that we're saying that there were -1 blue counters in the bag, which is complete rubbish. So we will ignore the answer of n is equal to 3, and we will take the answer. So let's get rid of that. We'll take the answer of n is equal to 10 instead. So therefore, it means that you had 6 blue counters in that bag. And so it means that for this particular question, our n is equal to 10. And that's the end of it, guys. A very, very long video, but I hope you sort of got the idea of how to do probability equations. It's not really that bad, but, you know, find some questions, have a go, and see how best you do with them. All right, thank you.